Agility, rally, dock diving, competition obedience, bite sports? The big question is, should your service dog also compete in dog sports? And today, I'm going to answer that question. Hi, I'm Laura from Doggy U, and I'm a certified guide dog mobility instructor, service dog trainer, and trick trainer. And today, we're going to be talking about service dog work and dog sports. Training your own service dog is a long-term, resource-intense commitment. It's not just training a task or two, it is a whole lifestyle. Doing dog sports on top of that commitment will sometimes pull attention away from that primary goal, but it can also add a lot to your relationship if it's done well. So let's start by talking about why you might decide to add dog sports to your service dog's life, the pros and also the cons and things to consider before diving in. We'll also talk about other considerations like budget and physical fitness, as well as what sports might complement service dog work and which sports I'd think hard about before adding that sport to my dog's training schedule. The appeal of dog sports. Let's start with this. Dog sports, they're just a lot of fun to play with your dog. The fast feedback and visible progress towards your goals can be really rewarding. And if we're being honest, sports can just feel more fun than the often slow and repetitive nature of service dog work. But playing different sports also gives us the opportunity to train under different trainers and opens us up to problem solving that can apply across disciplines. For example, the way that I teach a service dog to drop an item is the same way that I teach a dog to drop a disc at a distance, and then I just apply it to household things. So you can check out that video. I'll link it somewhere up here and down in the comments. But you do have to be careful because it's easy to spend more time on those things that are super fun and adrenaline pumping and maybe show quicker results, or to jump around to different sports if you have ADHD like me. But what you really need to make sure you're doing is spending the time on the service dog foundations that they really deserve. Dog sports as a genetic outlet. Many working breeds have drive, energy, and instincts that may not have an outlet within service dog work. Sports can allow a healthy expression of those genetics while also putting some control around it. For example, when Jake was younger, he used to chase my horse. But once I started herding lessons, the horse chasing stopped. Because not only did he have an outlet for this natural herding instinct, but he also learned control around challenging distractions. And when you find a sport that meets your dog's innate needs, it can reduce boredom while also building engagement and teamwork. Early experiences before service dog readiness. Sports can build confidence in a young dog that isn't quite ready for public access or task training. Denver is 8 months old now, and I haven't started any formal task training because some of my tasks have an emotional component that isn't appropriate for young puppies. But training for other titles gives us goals and objectives to build a common training language and teamwork that I can use once he's emotionally and socially mature without having to wait until he's a bit older. Going to competitions can also be a great place for socialization and training. Being around tons of other dogs while they're working or in high arousal while teaching your dog to remain neutral is great training. Training for sports can also be great for young dogs or those still learning their foundations. Many of the foundations for certain sports are complementary to service dog work. Does Denver need to retrieve a duck for me for a service dog task? No, absolutely not. But he may need to retrieve another awkward and weighty item like a crutch for me if I'm having an EDS episode. So we'll talk about which types of sports might complement your service dog training later on in the video. Community and connection. Sports environments can allow you to meet like-minded, dog-obsessed people, whether that's at competition or through training classes. The people who do dog sports are generally just as obsessed with their dogs as you are. They get it. It can also sometimes feel really isolating training your own service dog, and you might not be able to find other service dog trainers in your community. But there's typically dog sports everywhere, and that can be great motivation to step outside of the service dog training bubble and into another sport where you can find that community and motivation. There's also the potential for disability support in the form of body doubling by training with friends, or for getting that structure that you need through training classes by providing that weekly training as well as homework. Now, before I get into the cons of dog sports and the things that you need to consider, I would love it if you could head on down and boop that like button. Doing so positively reinforces me and lets me know that you want more videos. Budget and time trade-off. So I think it's important to ask, is this taking away from what I could be spending on service dog training? The cost of training classes, travel, gear, entry fees, all of that can be really significant. And we already know that training a service dog is a huge both financial and time commitment. So the important question to ask, besides if this is in my budget, is it taking away from what I could be spending to further my service dog training? And then when we think about the time component, we all know that everyone only has so many hours in the day. And when you're living with a chronic illness or disability, you may only have so many spoons to devote to training. So we also need to think about, is the training for sports taking away from the time or the ability that I have to train for service dog work? But on the flip side, time spent training for other sports might actually prevent you, if you're someone who might, say, hyper focus on service dog training and potentially push a young dog too hard and burn them out quickly because that's the thing that you're focusing on. If sports gives you a different outlet and a way to vary that dog's experience, it might be worth the time and resource investment. Physical structure and fitness considerations. Is your dog physically built for the sport that you're considering? Or do they maybe have a structural deviation that might make certain sports more physically demanding or challenging or more impactful on them? We want to consider the dog's body and how it will be used in the sport. Service dogs already use their bodies daily, a lot of times on hard surfaces like pavement or concrete, so we want to avoid overloading them. This is an especially important consideration for guide dogs or any dogs doing any weight-bearing mobility. You're going to want to consult with your vet on a regular basis, as well as potentially a rehab specialist or a canine fitness pro, to make sure that the things that you're doing with your dog are not going to have long-term impacts, especially for their service dog work. We also seriously want to consider risk of injury. We want to make sure that we're warming up our dogs, cooling them down, stretching, all of that. Of course, injuries can happen anytime or during play with other dogs, but your risk of injury is generally higher when you're doing higher impact sports or repetitive motions. As a human example of this, I have never once broken my arm just walking down the street, but I have broken it when I've been riding a snowboard off of a jump. Risk of injury is just higher when you're doing higher impact activities. So that just means that you have to decide what makes sense for you. But if you do have a dog that's going to be competing in dog sports, I highly recommend that you have insurance and a medical team. Now, we talked about prevention through warming up, cooling down, stretching, that kind of thing, but what about other preventive measures? Do you have a canine chiropractor for your dog? Acupuncturist? Massage therapist? Laser? PT person to do preventative work and to notice things before they become full-blown problems? Because as a person who had a service dog who is lightly involved in competitive sports, I have had all of those things for her, and Denver is heading right into that pipeline because I would much rather do preventative care than have to notice a little thing that's off and rest or fix it as needed instead of waiting for there to be a huge problem. Is this a little bit extra? Maybe, but if you get into dog sports, you are going to find a lot of people who are doing the exact same thing for their dog to keep them healthy, and that is something we really need to consider when we're talking about service dog work as the priority. And while it's not in everyone's budget and it is absolutely not a requirement, it is something that I devote resources to because it's worth it to me to have the animals that I rely on feeling their best. The impact of different types of dog sports. Here are some sports that I think can really add to your service dog work in that they build skills that will improve your overall service dog work, teamwork, or even lay foundations for future service dog work, while giving your dog a fun outlet that complements your service dog goals. Rally obedience and competition obedience. These sports reinforce precision and obedience skills in a fun, engaging format. It develops proprioception and communication in ways that you'll need for service dog work, and it helps you develop reinforcement strategies that work for your dog as you work towards being in the ring without food or toy reinforcers. There's also a big focus on heeling, which is a large component of public access work. This is especially true in rally, which has a bit of a looser heeling style. This can also be a way to earn titles while practicing really similar skills that you'll need for public access work, and those titles can be a way to keep up your motivation during the longer process of training a service dog. Trick dog titles. While not a competition, trick dog titles can be a really fun, low stress, and mentally stimulating way to document the progress you're making with your dog. It can reinforce your bond, and many tricks are task precursors. You can even choose tricks that specifically relate to your service dog task goals while earning titles all from your house. You don't have to go anywhere. It's a great boredom buster too. We basically earned Denver's advanced trick dog title during this really icy week where I needed something to break up the boredom and give us a goal to work towards when we couldn't get outside and hike. Scent work / nose work. Scent work can be a good complement or even foundation work for scent-based tasks. It also builds focus around distractions and problem-solving ability. Scent work can also help build confidence in less confident dogs. Plus, it's very low impact on the joints, so it's great for dogs of all ages. Shed hunt, hunt test, and AKC fetch. These activities can be great outlets, especially for retrieving breeds. It also develops a strong retrieve to hand, which is a task many service dogs are trained for. Participating in these sports can also help develop significant restraint around big distractions, including having to honor or watch patiently while another dog works. But I do want to highlight here the need for caution around developing an obsession around the different retrieving items. This one is a bit of a yellow flag because we need to balance the love of the retrieve with a lot of self-control around those items. Now let's talk about higher impact sports that I'd proceed with a little bit more caution. Generally, dogs understand context. They can understand that there's a time and a place for certain activities. But when we're talking about sports that involve building considerable drive, especially for certain toys, I want to mention here, especially for people that are new to the sports, that we need to also build in a lot of control around those toys, especially for service dog work where your service dog might see those toys in their everyday life. But that isn't the only consideration. Physical exertion and risk of injury are both things that I'm considering before taking on some of these high impact sports. Some of the sports that might be grouped into this higher impact category would be agility, flyball, frisbee, or disc, and even dock diving. Now, I'm not going to go over each of these sports individually because they have similar pros and cons, except for the one that I haven't mentioned yet, which is bite sports, which I'm going to talk about in the next section because I think it deserves its own discussion regarding service dog work. Now, I definitely don't want to portray these high impact sports as all negative because they absolutely are not. There are a ton of pros to having your dog involved in these higher impact dog sports. They can build confidence in a dog, coordination, proprioception, teamwork, work at a distance, the ability to work under pressure, and so much more. But they also can sometimes be hard on the joints, physically demanding, and require a conditioning routine along with a warm-up and cool down, though your service dog should also probably have a conditioning routine to keep them in top shape. But the risk of injury in sports is just a little bit higher, so you have to decide what's worth it for your dog as well as have a plan for what happens if your dog does get injured and cannot work as a service dog for some period of time. It's also why you want to keep up your coping skills as well as other disability mitigation techniques that you can use in the case that your service dog is out of commission for some period of time. And that's true whether or not you decide to get involved in dog sports. So my biggest tip here is to use moderation. Don't train high impact sports every day and make sure that you're monitoring your dog for signs of soreness or fatigue that may impact other areas of their life, like their service work. Bite sports. So the last thing that I want to talk about that's definitely going to raise some hackles because people have lots of strong opinions about is protection sports or bite sports. Now, I'm not going to talk about the legality of training bite sports with your service dog, mostly because I've read the laws. It's a little gray for me and I am not an ADA lawyer. But what I do want to talk about is the practical implications for training for this type of sport. Now, because I trained German Shepherd dogs exclusively for nearly a decade, I have a lot of friends in bite sports. And I think the obedience portions, the tracking, and a lot of different components of the training can be a great outlet for some dogs. But the protection and bite work portion of the training is not something that I would do with a service dog. Now, I'm not talking about playing with a pillow, playing tug, that kind of thing, but I am talking about progressing that training to a sleeve or a decoy. So as much as I do believe that dogs can generally understand context, mistakes happen. Now, the worst thing that could happen if my hunt test trained dog mistakes context is that they retrieve a bird to me. But the worst thing that can happen if my bite sport trained dog mistakes context is somebody gets hurt. Because in a stressful situation, a firefighter suit looks a whole heck of a lot like a decoy suit. And if I'm not able to control my dog for whatever reason, like I'm unconscious and a mistake is made, that puts three things at risk: my dog and me, if the firefighter can't get to me, as well as that emergency worker. And that's not a risk I'm willing to take to play a sport that my dog does not need to play. Instead, I would get a dog dedicated to those sports. Whether you want to play Mondio or Schutzhund or whatever you want to play, you get a dog that is bred for that work, because the dog that's going to be a top performer in one of those sports is not the same dog that's going to be happy sitting under your desk all day. So should you play dog sports? Well, that all depends on you, your dog, your goals, and your ability to balance it all. Sports can enhance your partnership, or they can pull focus away from your main goal of service dog work. So you have to be honest about what it's doing for you and your dog. So let me know down in the comments. Do you do dog sports with your service dog? And what sports do you do, and what's your experience been like? I would love to know. And if you enjoyed this video, you're going to enjoy this one too. So you should click on it now. You all have an awesome day and happy training.